Hey everybody, I'm not childish. I'm at a higher level of immaturity, and I prove it just like every other person does every day by my actions. I pray that God doesn't hold it too much against me. At least I'm trying to be honest about it and making some effort to do something about it for myself, and hopefully through my videos, maybe someone will be touched. So, doing your best. How many of us really know what our best is? I'm not sure that I know my true best. I can be pretty sure that at least in some areas I've never even gotten close to what I'm capable of. Other areas I know, if for no other reason, because I went further than what was my best, and you might say stuck my neck out and got my head cut off. Learning things the hard way. Like I've said before, you don't know where the edge is until you go over it. So when you're trying to find out your best, you don't know where your best lies until there is nothing left of you. That's part of the idea of sports, is making sure that every time you compete that you've left nothing, that there's nothing more left of you. You left everything on the field. I know that most people don't have any clue as to what their best is. I'm sure that a large portion of them think they do, which is one of the things that I would challenge people with when I was any type of a manager. Not to beat themselves up or to try to see how many parts they could produce to the point that they, couldn't perform or that they lost focus, but to really ask them, are you really doing your best? And the idea of pushing yourself is not really familiar to most people. The idea of staying up for several days, studying even, or to prepare for something that you really believe in. Helping other people to the point that you've just reached total exhaustion, mentally and physically. Now, I've reached those points a couple times. I'm not going to get into mine personally. However, I did just get off the phone with my son, and I don't talk to him very often. He's a Marine. He's out of the Marines now, but you never stop being a Marine. And that's part of their pride. Along with their pride, though, is that they know what their best is. They've been pushed far beyond what they ever expected they could do, and that's before they got into battle. And in battle, they got pushed even further. And they found out why they were trained the way they were to start with. And that's really good. It's a shame that we don't all get a little more of that type of a training. Like I say, it doesn't have to be just physical training. It can be mental. It's just a way of realizing that if you need to, you got the strength to do more than what you're doing. One of the things, though, that I found with people is not only don't they push themselves, but they look at everybody around them and make sure that they don't do more than the others. And some of the argument is, you know, I'm not getting paid as much, so why should I do as much as they do? Or why should I do more than them? Well, of course, I mean, part of the basic argument is because you could get ahead of them. If you're really better than them and you're capable of doing more, demonstrate that and you may get promoted. But no, they're worried about somebody else doing less than them. Now that really, of course, drives our world in the wrong direction. I think you can look at our Congress, and each one of them does less than the one before. And yet they act like they're doing so much more. They're not dedicated. They're not trying to make the world a better place. And really, in a lot of respects, they're only trying to make it look like they're doing something just so they can get voted in again. Because they're on a free ride. They really are. I had a guy that I worked with. I never thought about this before, but when it would get near the end of the day, he would all of a sudden get busy. And one day he finally said to me, he says, I got to get going. He says, I haven't done anything all day. He says, I got to make it look like I've been doing something. So he throws a big sheet of aluminum up on this project and tacks it down and acts like that's a day's worth of work. It's unbelievable how we learn to be lazy and don't even really want to find out how good or what we're capable of. I have I have an example of a person. Now, I'm going to tell you that before I make fun of my ex-brother-in-law, he's an excellent manager, and he definitely knows how to perform well, and he does not cut corners or try to do less than what's required. He's very good at that. But one day, we're out throwing the football. Me, his brother, another brother-in-law, and maybe a friend or two. Now, my brother-in-law's a tall guy in excellent physical shape, weight lifts and all this stuff. He was string bean as a teenager, but he really filled out and really a strong person physically. And he's the one throwing the football. Well, he's only, we'll say, getting it about halfway down the field that we're in, and his brother, of course, starts making fun of him for how he was throwing, you know, and how wimpy he was. And you know what? He went from throwing half the distance of that field to the full length. But it was like he thought he was already throwing as hard as he could. And then once he got it mad, you might say, he found out he could throw a hell of a lot further. I caught one of his passes, and my problem was I had to worry about running into all the pine trees at the end of the field, because he threw it all the way. I mean, he had an arm on him then just like as good as any quarterback in the NFL. You know, maybe not accuracy and all that, but I'm just saying just distance. So there's an example of, you know, not really doing your best. But then there comes a time, and this is something that we need to all learn, but a lot of us never do. And in fact, I think that's one of the problems with this world. Our best may not be good enough. And that's hard to accept if you're doing your job really hard and you're doing everything you think is possible to do it right, and yet you're being told that you're not performing well enough. And you try, and most people won't benchmark other people to understand how well they're doing. They don't want to. They don't want to find out that, that actually either they could be doing better, or that actually that's the best they are going to be able to do. That's it. They're not going to get any better. When I was running cross country, I finally, by the end of the season, I did get on the varsity team, which meant I was in the top 7. The very next year, though, it became clear to me that that's all the better I could be. I might be able to get in the top 7, but chances were that even if I did, I wouldn't score any points, because only the top 5 actually score points. So I finally gave up on it, not just because I couldn't get any better, but because I had other things that I was more interested in. I was more interested in machine shop and automotive. That, physics and things like that interest me much more. So, I moved on from it. And of course, I had something else to fill the void, so it didn't bother me so much. But what if your boss comes to you and says, you're going to have to get to this level, or we're just not going to be able to keep you? And I've told this story about a guy that worked in a company in the tool room, and he actually would take 4 times longer to do a job and his work wasn't any better. If anything, it was a little worse than the best performer in the shop. Well, it didn't matter how many years he had experience. His best wasn't good enough anymore. They needed to find somebody better, and they knew they could. It wasn't as if there was a shortage of tool makers out there that could outperform him. So what happens, let's say, and I like using this example of, what do they call the medical student that graduates lowest in their class? Doctor. Doesn't matter whether you had straight A's and you created a new procedure for open heart surgery, or whether you got through just with the grades, the minimal requirements. Still, you're called a doctor. Who do I want working on me? Now, I'm not saying the straight A student is necessarily the best either. However, I'm using that as a way to gauge. What if you're in the middle of an operation and the person dies? Yet, if someone that was better than you had been doing the operation, they would have lived. How do you deal with that? You got to be honest before it even happens. Where is your level of competency? How good are you? Do you really know how to perform to your best? And if you don't, if you realize your limitations, be honest about them. It's nothing to be ashamed of. We all need jobs, yes. But we need to be doing what we're best at, not what other people tell us we should be doing, or not doing what we want to do because it makes the most money. That's all the wrong reasons. Because sometimes your best is not good enough. And we need the best. My son was in the Marines. He was an extremely good shot. He was in sniper school. But he also realized that there's always somebody out there that's better. That it was his challenge to try harder. Not to say, well, why should I do more than someone else and not get any more credit than they do? No. He understood. I'm not going to say that I'm not taking credit for his ability. He learned that. Some of it was from discipline from me. A lot of it was discipline from the Marines. He learned how to be as best as he could, I'm going to say at the moment, because we can always find ways to get better. We have to first realize, where we stand. And that actually brings up another point. You can be best in different ways. You can reach the same level of performance in different ways. Some people are natural. My son, as far as shooting, he was pretty much a natural. However, through training, he became even better. Now me, I'm not a natural. But through practice and getting the right tools, in other words, the right gun and things like that, I got pretty good. Same way with other things in my life. I'm not the best artist at all, not even close. But if I spend enough time, I can draw a pretty nice picture. I'm going to have to spend the time, though. Put in the extra effort. And sometimes that's what makes you the best. That's when you're doing your best. Not because you're the most gifted, but because you're the most determined. That can help you as well. So, don't fool yourselves when you think you're doing the best. Your best may not be good enough. You should always be challenging yourself to make your best even better, though. Thanks for listening.